Hello, community. Today we're going to talk about AutoGPT and BabyAGI. Let me show you why. We have here this very famous GitHub repository now about AutoGPT. And as the author writes it, an experimental open source attempt to make GPT fully autonomous. Well, the solution is quite easy. So, what we have here is we have internet access for searches, but this internet access is over an API. An API you have to pay for. Then we have some long-term and short-term memory management in the form of some vector representation and vector spaces. I will show you an in-depth view in a moment. We have GPT-4 as our main intelligence in the whole system. And then we have, via the interface functionality of LangChain, access to popular websites and the platforms where we have data. And then we have, if you want, summarization with GPT 3.5, 3.5 Turbo, and whatever you have. So beautiful. And as you already noticed, and this is now something very positive, that here on the GitHub, right next to experimental open source application, there is that you need an OpenAI API key, and you need to set up a paid account with all your credit data for this system to work. So this is one of the very first API that you have to provide your credit data for. You will have a free trial, and in my understanding, it depends on the region where you are. I've seen free trial of $3. I've seen a subscriber telling me they have $18 of free trial. So wherever you are, you have a free trial, but be aware, whenever the free trial is finished, you have your credit card over there. And therefore, one of the most important buttons to press here is the limits. You can set monthly spend limits here, for example, with OpenAI, and I can highly recommend this, that you say, okay, per month, $20 for this, or $50. But remember, this is just one of the first API you have to pay for. So depending on the complexity of the task you ask for, you have this 5 times or 10 times. So choose your monthly threshold wisely. Okay, and here we go. Now, at first, it is always great if you read this system can act autonomously without requiring a human. This is what you are dreaming of. A system has your credit card data and it goes shopping. Well, it's not that beautiful, but have a look. Interesting fact about AutoGPT is that it is currently not integrated in the LangChain ecosystem. So the interface functionality between GPT-4 and all external services is not a LangChain, but it is done manually with code written by the authors. And talking about code, just very short, you have, of course, to specify your OpenAI API key, as I told you. You can run on different cloud platforms like Azure. And if you run on Azure, for example, you have to have all your different keys and whatever. So keep every documentation of your cloud compute accounts ready. And so let's have what is the easiest view on the whole system architecture. Well, on the left-hand side, we have GPT-4. Maybe you have also GPT 3.5 or whatever you work with from Microsoft or OpenAI. And remember, we have this beautiful 4K prompt where 4096 tokens is our input corridor to GPT-4. And for GPT-3, it is cheaper, but GPT-4 is, of course, if you want a better operational system with a higher accuracy. And then you have on the other side here, all professional external services. They have a professional API where you can put in your professional credit card and you can pay your professional money for the professional service that those microservice service provider or real service provider, whatever you need from the internet. And then in between, you have simply memory. But this memory has a special form. If you've seen my last video, you know that here the text, for example, sentences, are converted to mathematical objects to vector representation in a specific vector space. We call this a vector embedding. And if two sentences have a similar semantic meaning, this takes care that those sentences are close in this constructed vector space. And if we take the mathematical operation of a cosine similarity on two vector objects, we have now with the cosine similarity an instrument to find sentences that are about the same topic. This is, if you want, a vector store, a vector database with a cosine functionality. This is somewhere in the cloud. You pay the cloud service provider, you pay the software service provider, you know what it is. So those are your main building blocks. Those are the main chunks that you have in your system architecture. Now let's look at the flow. Since we do not have here, as I told you, LangChain as an interface functionality, everything is here simply connected with the internet and with a manual written code example as specifically fitted here for AutoGPT. Beautiful. So let's start. There was a funny publication where they said that the main user in America is about 16 years old if you are asking about AutoGPT. So I don't know if this is the case worldwide, but it's a nice idea to have here a 16-year-old teenager, and he has now a question here, and he uses AutoGPT. So there's one input with one question, and it goes into GPT-4. Beautiful. Then GPT-4 has here the possibility to ask to interlink with other GPTs. Well, you know, all the tokens that come out here are here input tokens. You have to pay for input tokens. Then your question here is calculated. You have to pay for that. Then you have output tokens. You pay for output tokens. Then those output tokens are input token here. You pay for input tokens. And you get here this beautiful circle of life. And then GPT sometimes decides, okay, now I have enough information. Now I can have an interface to the world. Now I need resources. And those resources are here, for example, external services. Some of them are very costly, some of them are medium costly, and maybe some of them are free. Now, ChatGPT or GPT-4 or whatever you have when you watch this video, we have here now the control cycle number 3. Sorry, there's nothing here. It's just I couldn't find the curve here. But ChatGPT, GPT-4 decides only this AI, which external service it would need to fulfill here question number 1. So it goes there, accesses API, you have your API key, the service provides the service, and you get an answer. And those answers are now fed back into a database. Why? Because the answer can be quite lengthy, and you know we have here a 4K token length. So you store all the different answers, hops, and then something beautiful is happening. All those sentences are transformed to vector objects, vector representation in a very specific vector space. And then you have the cosine, and given that you have now that you know what you're looking for, 90% of the answers that were fed back here, either you delete it because you just need 10% of the answer, because in those 10% there is the factual answer to your question. So 90% lost, or you store everything here in the database and you have higher database cost, depending if you are working with gigabyte, terabytes, whatever amount of data. And just to show you here, about 1 year ago, I made a video about the IPCC report, 3,600 pages, and I used exactly here a 3D visualization here of a sentence bird embedding. So let me show you how does it look like. You can have different correlation, you can have different topological analysis, you can have a cluster analysis. So whatever you want to do here, you can do amazing things. You can have, I don't know, you can define how many thematic clusters you want to have. You see here in 3,600 pages, I had close to 100 thematic clusters, and you can zoom in, you can have a detailed analysis of everything. So this is something we're familiar with. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, I had all detailed videos if you want to code this for yourself. And coming back now, this result here, this reduced set of information, but where the information is incorporated, this tiny result is now fed back into our 4K token, or whenever you watch it, 16K token length, or maybe even 32K token length. So GPT has now the first iteration to its job. Now, ChatGPT or GPT-4 may decide that it needs now another run, that it needs now additional data. So you see what is going on, and it's on and on and on. And this is why I told you, please do think about that you define threshold for your financial APIs where you have your credit card data. Because if you run this, and if you're coding, and if you're deep and focused and concentrated and working, believe me, if you look up after 10 hours of coding, you would not believe the bill, the amount of resources that you have to pay for. So always good to have some threshold installed. And just to make sure, the only body who decides in this whole system is the intelligence of this AI system. And if this AI system is an LLM, like GPT-4 for example, this GPT-4 decides all processes that run here and all processes that could be very expensive. Talking about expensive, let's talk about security. Since GPT-4 is here steering which web server or which address it connects to, there is now, unfortunately, in the last days happened that people understood how the system works. And they set up some APIs with, let's call it some malware in general. There's that's re-instruct formation, or there's some prompt injection, or whatever you can think of. So whenever ChatGPT or GPT-4 auto connects now to a link for whatever reason, maybe it was given the address in another service, then you could have that maybe if there's a direct feedback link to GPT-4, that you could have here some problems. Or a more disastrous phenomenon I've heard of. At first, they play here that they are a free service, but there's something going on I do not want to describe to you. So security here is a real hot topic that has on this system not been addressed, that you really can recommend. This is a safe system. Please keep this in mind. And talking about risk and security, I've read here in the news, AutoGPT lets you set it, forget it, and rake in the passive income that AutoGPT creates for you. Whenever I read this somewhere in the news, you know what's happening to me? Exactly this. This yellow warning sign appears. And I hope whenever you read something like this, that you just have to set it up, give it your credit card data, forget it. And then, do you really believe that you rake in the passive income? What are the costs that you pay for this? So, please be careful. Recommendation. If you want to see here the full code development, there's a YouTube channel, Sophia Young. This is her handle. Have a look at this channel. If you like it, give it a like, subscribe to her. And you see here in the background the output of AutoGPT. And I'm not gonna let you read it because you have to go to her channel and have a watch. Beautiful. Next object, BabyAGI. There's a reason I put it second. Although BabyAGI is taking Silicon Valley by storm, yuppie, so okay. So what is it? It is very similar. It is a task-driven autonomous agent. We have our key players. We have GPT-4. We have again a vector store, a vector database, cosine similarity. But now we have a LangChain interface functionality with a task to autonomously create and perform tasks based on an objective. Sounds familiar, not? For example, objective might be create and run a small content marketing business. Let me tell you, the intelligence always is only in GPT-4 with its 4K token length. Beautiful. So this is the GitHub repository of BabyAGI, and they have a warning. BabyAGI is still in its infancy, and thus we are still determining its direction and the steps to get there. So this is not even experimental, this is alpha prototype experimental times 2. Beautiful. How does it work? Easy. Instead of a single task, a single question you ask the system, we have a list of tasks. This is one of the main differences. Then also you have OpenAI API, you pay for this. You enrich the result by external services. You know what this means, API. Stores it in a vector database with a cosine similarity. You know that this sounds similar, or you know this. And then it creates new task and reprioritizes the task based on the list. Now this is something interesting because it has now an additional functionality. It learns in each step, and therefore maybe on the task list it finds out after task 1, task 2, I have to shift down a little bit and I have to insert another task because I have to find out about a specific code segment first. So, nice idea. As I told you, BabyAGI uses the LangChain framework. So we have all our code segments that we love and use, and we can use it here. And as I told you, since we have a list of tasks, we have now 3 functions. Some people say there are 3 agents or 1 agent and 3 functions. Whatever wording you like, just the content is important. You have an execution agent, task creation agent, and you have a prioritization agent. So this is the text to it. Please read it. I'm going to show you the same now in a visualization by the author. So here is his documentation. Have a look at this. It's really interesting to read. So we have an input. The first input is an objective and a task if you want. And this task here goes to the task execution, brings back a result. Result goes to the task generator, to the second one, creates now a new task. The task list goes to the task prioritization. The task prioritization reorganizes the different tasks and define what is the next task to execute. Interestingly, you have here a security agent that might emerge in the next week. I hope so. And it's a very good idea to integrate here security. And of course, as you know, we have a vector store outside of all of this where we can store the text document, PDF, information, finance data, string data, whatever you have in the mathematical representation of a vector in a vector space. This is it. Simple. But let me show you this now a third time, and this third time, the same thing now in code. Now we know we have 3 agents, or 1 agent with 3 functions. The first one is execution. So we come here, we have task execution, then task generation, and task prioritization. And I show you now that this task are very simple to understand. If you remember that I told you at GPT-4, you have the prompt, and you have something like in the fine-tuning methodology toolbox, you have something like instruct fine-tuning, where you provide a template with clear instruction. And you're not going to believe it can exactly this here is going to happening. So you tell now GPT-4, you are an AI who performs 1 task based on the following objective. Create a small and medium-sized enterprise for marketing or whatever. take into account these previously completed tasks. And then you have whatever, you have a marketing study or have nothing, whatever. And then you tell GPT-4, your task is task response. So you see, you could type this into the prompt on your free ChatGPT or your ChatGPT Plus. There's no difference. This is just the automated version. So you say, hey, you are now in AI, so I have role playing. These are the tasks you have to do. This is your input. This is the output I expect. You have an instruction. You have a template. Beautiful. Next step. Creation. We have now the same thing. You tell now GPT-4, you are now a task creation AI that uses the result of the execution agent. This was here our execution chain. To create new task with the following objectives. You know the objective. The last completed task has the result, so you integrate if you already have a result here. This result was based on the task description, your last task description. There's an incomplete task, the rest of your list. Based on the result, create new task to be completed by the AI system, which is GPT-4 itself, that do not overlap with incomplete task. Return the task as an array. So you see, again, you could just type this manually into ChatGPT and you will get the same results. You have here an instruction-based fine-tuning prompt or an ICL if you want then here, because we cannot fine-tune here ChatGPT or GPT-4. This is also an ICL and this is what we get back. And the last one is, as I told you, the task prioritization. And again, you tell GPT-4, hey, you are a task prioritization AI, task with cleaning the formatting of and reprioritizing the following task, A, B, C. Consider the ultimate objective of your team. Create a marketing, small and medium-sized business. Do not remove any task. Return the task as a numbered list like first task, second task, third task. Start the task list with number. So you have a template. You could type this in manually to ChatGPT, or you pay here for GPT-4 API, whatever it is. You see this is in-context learning on a GPT-4 system, and this is so beautiful to do. And you understand now what those three agents or one agent with three functions is doing. And those three agents you see here, those are my circles, merry-go-round circles. Those are my three agents here. So you see, we have GPT-4. Here, our 16-year-old something teenager gives a list of tasks with an objective. And the first objective is create here my new business. And first task, start now. Beautiful. So goes into a 4K funnel to GPT-4. It's an ICL command if you want. We cannot change the weights of GPT-4 to learn anything internally via fine-tuning. So we get a result back, and this intense communication with GPT-4 here is one of the characteristics here of this specific BabyAGI, implementing the standard interface functionality of LangChain frameworks. Beautiful. The rest is the same. You have external services. You have your vector store. You have your cosine similarity, or maybe you use a topological similarity, or you use anything else. But the main structure for your understanding, this is what's going on. These are the main constituents in your system architecture. Beautiful. This is it, more or less. The nice thing about BabyAGI is there's a very short script to install. You have 7 points and you are up and running, even if you do not know how to program at all. So you just have your Jupyter notebook, for example, your Colab notebook. You say git clone, and you have here the BabyAGI git command. You change into the cloned repository. You install the Python requirements, the other Python libraries that you need to execute this. then you need to put in all your API keys, where you paid you with your credit card. You have here beautiful all your top secret API keys. As I told you can set an objective, create a business in marketing, whatever, and then you just type in Python BabyAGI.Python. Return and the system runs. This is here the beauty of BabyAGI, and this is why it's so, as you've shown in my first slide on BabyAGI, it took Silicon Valley by storm. The nice thing reading the documentation by the author is that he is aware of the key risk associated with his method, and he clearly addresses data privacy and security issues. So yeah, risk of data privacy, security breaches, access by unauthorized individuals. You remember I showed you whenever GPT-4 decides to link to an external internet address, you can't be sure on to what address the system connects to. So the idea to create something like a security agent, I think I would highly welcome this additional security layer here on BabyAGI. Let me give you now at the end some voices. The Chief Technology Officer of Ernst & Young said in an interview with VentureBeat, this is the article by VentureBeat, AutoGPT is fascinating, but he admits that he doesn't yet understand the details of how it actually works. Now you as a subscriber here of this channel, now you know how it works. So you know more than the Chief Technology Officer of Ernst & Young about it. What about NVIDIA? An NVIDIA AI scientist tweets, I see AutoGPT as a fun experiment, as the authors point out too, but nothing more. I'm not sure that it is nothing more. It has some really interesting aspects, but of course for the financial data, I told you how you can protect yourself against unforeseen financial expenses when you work with AutoGPT. NVIDIA scientist goes on, prototypes are not meant to be production ready. Yes, of course, it's really early in the development stage. Don't let media fool you. Most of the cool demonstration projects that you see online are heavily cherry-picked. Of course, this is true. But nevertheless, and if you like more the sector of here stability, AI, image, and so on, we have here the challenges becomes that we don't really know what an error looks like with AutoGPT. Well, I can tell you, if you are the father of a teenager, of a 16-year-old teenager, and you get your credit card bill from your credit card that your son uses, and you suddenly have $500 here from any internet sources, I can tell you, you know how an error looks like. You know how it feels, this error, because you get an emotion about this. So, and he goes on that AutoGPT currently fails in 15 to 30% of the time in reasoning. So whenever you use AutoGPT, if these are the error rates, one sort of an error rate, well, it depends. It is very early in the development cycle, but how we can reduce this error rate almost to zero with security agents, there's a lot of work ahead of us, but I think from the technical perspective, it is a highly interesting system that is coming into life, and we have to be really aware, and we have to know how the system functions, and we have to know how we have to control this system. And if government really wants to regulate it, we have to help here all legal politicians or whatever you call them to come up with solutions that are useful to implement and that really will not hold back the innovation cycle that we are currently in. This is it for me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was some information for you. As I told you, I like to share my knowledge that I have, and I hope to see you in my next videos.